The atmosphere was thick with tension as Yvonne, a passenger with no flying experience, was forced into an unimaginable situation. Her husband Elliot, who was piloting their King Air C-90, had suffered a heart attack and passed out mid-flight. Desperate and panicked, Yvonne grabbed Elliot's headset and made a frantic radio call for help. At this moment, understanding the technicalities of the situation becomes crucial. The aircraft in question, the King Air C-90, is a twin-engine turboprop known for its retractable landing gear, pressurized cabin, and capacity for up to 6 passengers. It's a complex machine, requiring significant pilot expertise, and the stakes were high. Yvonne was now flying this aircraft with no experience, under the extreme stress of her husband's medical emergency. The air traffic controller, recognizing the severity of the situation, immediately declared an emergency. He asked Yvonne if she was the co-pilot, which created some initial confusion, as Yvonne was simply in training, not a qualified pilot. Regardless, the controller swiftly understood the gravity of the situation and began guiding her step by step. A key technical element that kept the flight stable during this chaos was the autopilot system. With Yvonne unable to manually control the aircraft, the autopilot helped maintain altitude and heading, reducing the immediate risk of a crash. One of the most significant hurdles in this crisis was the radio communication. At first, the controller asked Yvonne to change frequencies, likely to avoid interference from other aircraft on the same channel. This was a crucial moment. Most passengers, like Yvonne, are unfamiliar with operating an aircraft's radio system. Yet, Yvonne managed to make the switch, allowing her to stay in contact with the ground team. The importance of this communication cannot be overstated. In similar real-life emergencies, clear communication has often been a deciding factor in survival. As Yvonne checked in on the new frequency, the controller, named Kevin, reassured her with calm professionalism. He identified himself as a flight instructor with some hours in the King Air, which was a comfort to Yvonne, knowing she wasn't alone in this. Kevin's voice was steady, and his words were carefully measured, giving Yvonne the confidence she needed to continue. The aircraft, a King Air C-90, was designed for experienced pilots. Its systems, while robust, require understanding and precise handling. Kevin's guidance was vital, as he calmly explained the basics of the aircraft to Yvonne. His first question was whether there was an oxygen mask nearby for Elliot. Yvonne, under immense pressure, found the mask and placed it over her husband's face. This small action could potentially stabilize his condition, but the true challenge was still ahead. Kevin's calmness extended beyond the technical aspects of the situation. He consistently reassured Yvonne, focusing on keeping her calm and managing her emotions. While the situation was terrifying, the technical systems of the aircraft and the controller's guidance allowed Yvonne to continue flying safely until further assistance could be provided. Comparing this incident to similar emergencies, such as United Airlines Flight 232, where a crew had to land an aircraft after losing all hydraulic control, highlights the crucial role that both technology and human expertise play in crisis management. In both cases, it wasn't just the physical machinery that saved the day, but also the composure and support provided by professionals on the ground. This event serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of training, both for pilots and for those who might find themselves in an emergency. In Yvonne's case, even with minimal flying knowledge, her ability to follow the controller's instructions and rely on the autopilot system helped ensure her safety and her husband's. Moreover, the use of critical equipment like the oxygen mask, alongside professional guidance, highlights how even in dire circumstances, technology and calm leadership can make all the difference. The story of Yvonne is not just one of personal bravery. It underscores the need for preparation, both in terms of technical skills and mental resilience, in aviation. The autopilot systems, the support from the air traffic controller, and Yvonne's ability to stay focused were all pivotal in preventing a tragedy. This real-life incident reminds us that the safety of an aircraft, often hinges on the seamless interaction between technology, training, and calm decision-making under pressure. Kevin, the air traffic controller, demonstrated calm and methodical thinking in a high-pressure situation. First, he verified that the autopilot was engaged and reassured Yvonne that the aircraft was perfectly safe in its current state. This quick action ensured that Yvonne didn't have to worry about the aircraft's immediate flight stability, while she focused on more critical tasks. Next, he advised her to assist her unconscious husband by placing an oxygen mask on him, as there was no way to know why Elliot had passed out in the first place. These steps were practical, but also showed Kevin's understanding of how quickly things could escalate if something went wrong. At this point, the situation was evolving rapidly. Yvonne had been open about her minimal flying experience, claiming to be a student, which seemed to mean she had learned a bit from her husband a year ago. But now, in this emergency, Kevin and his team would have to teach her how to fly and land the plane on her own, an overwhelming task for anyone, let alone someone with little experience. Kevin asked if Yvonne could determine the amount of fuel remaining on board. She reported having about 8.5 gallons of fuel, which was a critical piece of information. This allowed Kevin to make calculations about how much time they had before the fuel would run out, and therefore how much time they had to teach Yvonne how to safely land the aircraft. In aviation emergencies, fuel management is a key factor in determining the course of action, and Kevin wisely accounted for this in his planning. They were south of Bakersfield, and Kevin proposed heading toward Bakersfield Meadows Field, an airport with a runway almost 11,000 feet long. This was a wise decision. The airport's expansive runway provided ample space for someone with no piloting experience to potentially land a multi-engine aircraft like the King Air C-90. Having a long runway increases the likelihood of success for a first-time pilot, especially in an emergency where stress and lack of experience are overwhelming. The next step involved a decision to disengage the autopilot. Kevin explained that flying the plane manually would be easier than attempting to navigate using the autopilot and avionics, particularly for someone unfamiliar with the system. At some point, Yvonne would have to hand-fly the airplane to land it, so the sooner she could start getting comfortable with the controls, the better. Despite Kevin's encouragement, he never pressured Yvonne into making the decision to disconnect the autopilot. He phrased it carefully, asking if she felt comfortable making the change. Even though Yvonne seemed ready to try, she hesitated at the last moment. It's understandable. Disconnecting the autopilot and flying an aircraft by hand, especially in a stressful emergency, is a daunting decision. It's a moment of uncertainty that could easily overwhelm someone with limited experience, and Kevin respected her hesitation. Now, with the autopilot still engaged, they needed a new plan. Kevin handed off communication to another flight instructor, Sean, who would continue guiding Yvonne through the next steps. Sean asked Yvonne to locate the autopilot area with the HDG heading knob. This knob would allow them to turn the aircraft north toward the runway. However, Yvonne struggled to locate the knob. Their communication turned into a step-by-step search for the right control. Sean asked if the cockpit had individual instruments in the six-pack format, or if it was more modern with multiple screens. This was an important question because the King Air C-90 has the classic six-pack configuration, which meant Yvonne would need to look for specific dials and buttons, rather than a modern digital interface. Sean's question helped him adjust his instructions based on what Yvonne was seeing in front of her. As they continued to work through the layout of the cockpit, the tension was palpable. Yvonne's frustration with the instruments was understandable. She had no training and was thrown into an emergency situation where every second counted. But Sean's patient guidance and the careful, steady approach from both Kevin and Sean were critical in helping Yvonne feel less isolated in the cockpit. Despite her limited flying experience, the controllers were working together as a team to help her safely navigate the aircraft. In many ways, this was a perfect example of aviation teamwork. The air traffic controllers didn't just give orders, they communicated in a way that built Yvonne's confidence, step by step. They were methodical and provided constant reassurance. Despite the life-or-death situation, the controller's calm demeanor and expert guidance created an environment where Yvonne could make decisions with as much clarity as possible. This situation serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of communication, training, and experience. Even in emergencies, clear and calm instructions can make all the difference, as can having the right equipment and systems in place to back up the human effort. Kevin and Sean's coordinated efforts, along with Yvonne's persistence, show how teamwork in aviation can be the key to turning a life-threatening emergency into a successful resolution. The pressure was mounting as Sean continued to guide Yvonne through the delicate process of controlling the aircraft. He advised her to look for the attitude indicator, located at the top center of the cockpit. This instrument was crucial because it shows whether the plane is flying straight and level, helping Yvonne maintain control. Below it, there was a heading indicator, which Sean hoped she would use to adjust the plane's course. To turn the heading, Yvonne needed to locate a knob on the instrument panel, but this proved to be another hurdle. She wasn't sure what she was doing, and the instructions were overwhelming for someone who had never flown before. The struggle to interpret the instruments and the avionics was a significant challenge. As Sean noted, even though they knew the aircraft Yvonne was flying, they had no idea about its exact avionics setup. This lack of knowledge made it harder for them to give specific, tailored instructions. The cockpit layout varied between aircraft, and without visual confirmation, Sean had to rely on Yvonne's descriptions and guesses. In real time, this made the entire process more complex than it might sound. They spent 30 minutes working through these issues, trying to get the autopilot disengaged and the aircraft headed toward Bakersfield, but they ultimately missed the mark. Yvonne flew past Bakersfield and ended up about 100 miles northwest, which created a new problem. She would soon be out of radio range. At this point, Sean was growing increasingly concerned. If she didn't turn the plane around soon, communication would be lost, and Yvonne would be left flying blind. Finally, she managed to get the plane turned around using the autopilot, but now she was descending, and with no experience, she wasn't sure how to stop it. This new challenge required a new set of instructions. Sean's calmness was critical here. He walked Yvonne through the process of leveling the aircraft, instructing her to get the wings level with the horizon and to adjust the nose so it was level as well. But Yvonne encountered resistance when trying to make these adjustments. The problem was likely the trim wheel, a control used to adjust the flight surfaces and reduce the pressure on the controls. The trim wheel, which was located near the throttles, was essential for stabilizing the plane's flight path. Without using the trim, maintaining steady control would be incredibly difficult, especially for someone new to flying. Sean calmly walked Yvonne through the process of adjusting the trim wheel to stop the plane's descent. The steady, methodical instructions were exactly what Yvonne needed to regain some control over the aircraft and slow the descent. Despite the difficulty, Sean continued to reassure her, telling her she was doing a great job flying the King Air, a twin-engine turboprop. Although this aircraft was more complex than a single-engine plane, Sean reminded Yvonne that the King Air was docile and easy to fly. As long as she kept the throttle levers for both engines in sync, the plane would behave similarly to a single-engine aircraft, which was easier to handle. This reassurance was important. It helped Yvonne stay focused and less overwhelmed by the complexities of the plane. Once Yvonne managed to level off the aircraft and adjust the trim, Sean told her she was on the right track. He confirmed that her altitude was good and that she was heading toward Bakersfield, about 15 minutes away. At this point, Sean gave her a bit of breathing room, telling her that there was nothing more she needed to do except maintain her current heading and altitude. But as they got closer to Bakersfield, Sean reminded her that they would need to start slowing down the aircraft. The next challenge would be to get the plane to descend safely, land, and bring this intense situation to a close. Throughout this ordeal, Sean's calmness, patience, and clear instructions were invaluable. Flying an aircraft is an incredibly complex task that requires both physical skill and mental focus. For someone with no flying experience, the process was daunting, but Sean helped Yvonne remain composed and build her confidence, step by step. Every action she took, no matter how small, brought her closer to a safe landing. This experience highlighted the importance of clear communication, calm instruction, and reassurance in aviation emergencies. As Yvonne flew the plane toward Bakersfield, she wasn't alone. She had a team of professionals guiding her, giving her the knowledge and confidence to do what needed to be done. The next steps would be critical, but Yvonne was now in a better position to handle them, all thanks to the thorough and compassionate guidance from Sean and Kevin. As Yvonne approached her descent toward Bakersfield, Sean maintained his clear and steady guidance, ensuring she felt confident in each decision. He started by informing her of the plan. They would begin the descent in about 5 minutes. But before diving into the technical details, he asked, "Is that okay with you?" This simple question highlighted the importance of maintaining Yvonne's confidence, ensuring she wasn't overwhelmed by the tasks ahead. Sean would repeat this question throughout the flight, checking in with her regularly to make sure she was comfortable and not getting too stressed out. Sean's approach was patient and methodical. He first instructed Yvonne to push the nose of the plane down slightly, which would increase her airspeed. By doing this gently, she could begin the descent without causing the plane to pick up too much speed. This was important because at this stage, controlling the aircraft's speed and descent rate was crucial to avoiding a situation where they descended too quickly or dangerously. Once Yvonne adjusted the trim wheel and the nose of the aircraft, Sean had her reduce the power slightly to help slow the plane down. He checked in with her about the airspeed, confirming that it was now at a perfect 156 knots, which was ideal for the descent. As they neared Bakersfield, Sean began preparing Yvonne for the next stage, deploying the flaps to help slow the aircraft further for landing. He made sure she knew exactly where the flap selector was and reassured her that she didn't need to do anything with it just yet. By walking her through each step ahead of time, Sean ensured Yvonne wasn't caught off guard when the time came. Once Yvonne's altitude and heading were stabilized, Sean updated her on their position. She was about 25 to 30 miles away from the airport, which gave her some time to focus on the descent. He also informed her that Bakersfield Approach Control and Bakersfield Tower were now involved in the communication. This was a crucial point, as the controllers in Bakersfield would provide more specialized help when it came time for landing. Sean's reassurance that there would be other pilots and controllers ready to assist Yvonne further gave her a sense of relief, knowing she wasn't alone in this process. As the descent continued, Sean kept Yvonne focused on speed control. He instructed her to reduce the power further to slow the plane down, which was critical before deploying the flaps. Yvonne did this, and Sean quickly confirmed her airspeed was now 150 knots, which was perfect. He then directed her to put the flaps down to about 10 to 15 degrees, a crucial maneuver that would help slow the plane even more, making it easier to control as she neared the airport. Once the flaps were deployed, Yvonne's airspeed dropped to 139 knots, which was a bit lower than ideal. Sean immediately instructed her to add power to prevent the speed from decreasing too much. He carefully explained that the goal was to keep the plane slow enough to land safely, but not so slow that it became difficult to control. "We don't want to go below 100 knots, he reminded her, as they worked together to find that perfect balance between speed and control. As the flaps continued to help slow the plane, Sean instructed Yvonne to increase power to keep the plane's airspeed around 130 knots. It was important at this point not to rely on simply lowering the nose to increase speed. Instead, Sean emphasized adding power to control the descent and maintain the desired airspeed. This subtle, yet critical piece of advice ensured that Yvonne didn't inadvertently stall the plane or lose control due to too much drag or insufficient power. Yvonne's altitude was now stabilizing, which was a good sign. Sean reminded her to keep the power up, to maintain that altitude, and continue the descent toward Bakersfield. Things were getting busy as they approached the airport. Yvonne was juggling speed, altitude, and the flaps, all while preparing for landing. But Sean's calm and methodical guidance helped keep her focused, one step at a time. This moment underscores the importance of speed management in aviation. As the aircraft gets closer to landing, there is a delicate balance between slowing down for the approach and keeping the plane fast enough to remain stable and controllable. By guiding Yvonne to adjust the power and use the flaps appropriately, Sean helped ensure that the aircraft was in the optimal state for a safe landing. At this stage, Yvonne had made remarkable progress. She was now actively controlling the aircraft, adjusting the trim, speed, and flaps, all under Sean's guidance. The descent was steady, and the plan was coming together. The challenges of flying a plane for the first time were far from over, but with Sean's calm demeanor and clear instructions, Yvonne was on the right track to safely land the plane at Bakersfield. In this phase of the flight, it's essential to understand that Yvonne wasn't alone in the skies. Behind her was another King Air, piloted by an experienced aviator, whose role was to monitor the situation and provide additional support if needed. However, this pilot wasn't actively speaking on the radio. The reason for this was strategic. Too many voices on the radio could create unnecessary confusion, especially in a high-stress emergency. The decision to let the controllers handle all communications ensured that Yvonne received clear and consistent instructions, without conflicting advice. The pilot of the second King Air was essentially standing by, ready to intervene only if the situation became critical. As the situation unfolded, the controllers, particularly the one guiding Yvonne, were extremely attentive to her every move. When Yvonne's airspeed started to drop, the controller quickly reminded her to add power to prevent the aircraft from slowing down too much. At this point, Yvonne's ability to make the right adjustments was crucial for maintaining control of the aircraft. The controller's calming voice and constant checks on her progress helped keep Yvonne's focus where it needed to be, on flying the aircraft. After Yvonne managed to increase her airspeed to a safe level of 132 knots, the controller instructed her to begin a right-hand turn. This maneuver was part of a larger strategy to position Yvonne for a straight-in approach to the runway at Bakersfield Airport. Maintaining level altitude at 6,000 feet was critical during this turn, and the controller closely monitored her progress, offering reassurance as she completed the turn. Despite the progress, a new challenge arose. As Yvonne leveled off after her turn, she became focused on the task at hand, and her airspeed dropped once again. This loss of speed was a critical issue, as too slow a speed could lead to a stall. The controller quickly noticed the problem and instructed Yvonne to add more power, which was the correct response to regain airspeed without jeopardizing her altitude. With this adjustment, Yvonne's airspeed came back to an ideal 140 knots. But there was still work to be done. Next came one of the most crucial steps in landing the aircraft: deploying the landing gear. The controller guided Yvonne to the gear lever located on the throttle quadrant. He explained that she would need to pull and push the lever down to extend the landing gear, which was essential for slowing the aircraft as it prepared for the final stages of the descent. When Yvonne encountered difficulty, the controller patiently guided her through the process until she successfully lowered the gear. This moment marked a significant step in preparing the plane for landing. After the gear was down, the controller instructed Yvonne to push the nose down slightly to prevent the aircraft from climbing again. This was a critical move to ensure that the plane would continue descending toward the runway. He also provided her with a mental landmark. Bakersfield was at her 11 o'clock position, approximately 10 miles away. This information was essential for Yvonne to mentally prepare for the final approach, even as she focused on the controls. At this point, The controller asked Yvonne to look outside and locate the airport. As soon as she confirmed that she could see the airport, the next step was to point the nose directly at it, continuing the descent. The controller gave her permission to reduce the throttle slightly, ensuring the plane would continue descending at a manageable speed. He also reassured her that while he couldn't see her, the pilots at the tower would be able to see the aircraft and would take over the radio communication to guide her in for the final landing. As Yvonne approached the airport, the plan was for her to execute a straight-in approach to runway 12 left, the longer runway. A straight-in approach was ideal because it eliminated the need for any additional turns, which could be risky at such a low altitude, especially for an inexperienced pilot. However, despite the best efforts, Yvonne wasn't descending fast enough to make the straight-in approach viable. This is where the next phase of the flight would become the most critical. The tower controller would take over the communication and attempt to guide Yvonne through the final and most challenging portion of the flight. This phase of the flight underscores the importance of teamwork in aviation emergencies. While Yvonne was in control of the aircraft, the team of controllers, including the second pilot and the pilots in the tower, were all part of a coordinated effort to get her safely to the runway. The key elements of clear communication, strategic planning, and attention to detail were essential for guiding an inexperienced pilot through such a high-pressure situation. It was a reminder that aviation is not just about the skill of the individual pilot, but about how teams work together to ensure the safety and success of the mission. As Yvonne began her final approach to Bakersfield, the tower controller, John, took over the communication to guide her through the landing. He immediately asked if she could see the runway and confirmed that she had it in sight. Yvonne's confirmation was reassuring, but there was still work to be done. John instructed her to make a left turn to align herself for a final approach. He reminded her to keep the nose pointed slightly down, a technique to maintain the right descent rate. John's instructions were clear and precise as he guided Yvonne through the turns. He asked her to maintain her airspeed at 149 knots, which was perfect for this phase of the flight. As she completed the left-hand turn, the runway would be visible on her left side, and the next step would be to align with the runway for the final approach. The controller was keenly aware of the spacing issues. Yvonne was flying too tightly to the runway, so John had her fly over the top of the runway to gain more distance and set up for a right-hand pattern. This maneuver would help her line up for landing, giving her more time to adjust and ensuring a safer approach. His instructions allowed Yvonne to stabilize her position and prepare for the final steps. However, as Yvonne made the right-hand turn to line up with the runway, she was too close, which could have been dangerous. If she had tried to force the plane into alignment by pulling back on the controls, she risked an accelerated stall, a dangerous situation where the plane could lose lift and fall uncontrollably. Thankfully, Yvonne stayed calm, and with the controller's help, she chose to circle back around for another attempt. The second approach was more controlled. The controller asked her to keep her speed around 120 knots, which was crucial for the final approach. He instructed her to close the throttles and begin the process of landing. At this point, Yvonne was lined up with the runway, and the controller guided her through the final descent, telling her to keep the runway directly underneath the aircraft and to keep coming down towards it. Once she was aligned, the final step was to reduce the throttle to idle and gently bring the aircraft to a stop on the runway. The controller's calm and steady instructions helped Yvonne make the necessary adjustments, and when the plane touched down, it was a flawless landing. Despite the immense pressure and stress of the situation, Yvonne successfully landed the King Air C-90 without damaging the aircraft. She brought it to a complete stop and shut down the engines, a feat that seemed almost impossible given the circumstances. The controller, along with the other King Air pilot and air traffic controllers, played an invaluable role in ensuring her success. While the outcome of this story was a miracle, it was a tragic one as Yvonne's husband, Elliot, did not survive the heart attack. However, It's clear that Elliot would have been incredibly proud of his wife's remarkable performance in the face of such an overwhelming crisis. If it weren't for Yvonne's knowledge of radio communication and the calm guidance of the controllers, the outcome could have been very different. Her ability to communicate clearly and follow instructions was a key factor in the successful landing. In aviation, teamwork and clear communication are everything. The efforts of the controllers, the second pilot, and Yvonne herself combined to create a safe landing under extraordinary circumstances. This story is a powerful reminder of how preparation, calm decision-making, and effective use of technology and support can turn a life-threatening situation into a success. The video also touched on a similar incident involving an 80-year-old passenger who had to land a plane after her pilot husband passed away. The parallels between these two stories highlight the importance of staying calm, relying on training, and using every resource available when faced with an emergency. The story of Yvonne's heroic landing will undoubtedly inspire anyone who watches it, showing that in the most dire situations, human determination and teamwork can truly make all the difference.